The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was a mess. Voices shouted in hundreds of different languages. Some beings roared, others hissed, and a few made sounds that hurt human ears. The air smelled like fear and anger mixed together. Captain Lee, Dongwu, sat in the back row, watching it all. His uniform was simple and clean. His face showed no emotion, but his dark eyes saw everything. Next to him, Dr. Park So-young wrote notes on her tablet. She studied how aliens acted when they were scared or mad. The fighting had been going on for 3 years now. The Vorthak Empire and the Zalani Federation were destroying each other. Whole planets burned. Millions died every day. The war was spreading like a disease through the galaxy. Lee looked up at the massive dome above them. Through the clear walls, he could see ships from 100 different worlds. Some looked like metal birds. Others were shaped like giant crystals or living trees. But they all carried weapons. They all came here because they were afraid. A sound like breaking glass filled the hall. The council speaker, Kethvar, was trying to get everyone to be quiet. Kethvar looked like a walking mountain made of blue crystal. When he spoke, his voice rang like church bells. "The council will have order," Kethvar said. His words were translated into every language at once. "We face the greatest threat in galactic history. The Vorthak-Zalani War must end before it destroys us all." Lee had heard this same speech many times. For months, the council had tried everything. Peace talks failed. Trade blocs did nothing. Even threats of united action fell apart when the time came to act. On the left side of the hall sat the allies of the Vorthak Empire. These beings were mostly large and strong. They had thick skin, sharp teeth, and loud voices. Their leader was War Chief Grixthol. He was 9 feet tall and covered in scars. His people believed that only the strong deserved to live. On the right side sat the friends of the Zalani Federation. These aliens were different. They were thin and moved like dancers. Their skin changed colors with their moods. Their leader was High Priestess Sil-Andra. She spoke in whispers, but everyone listened. Her people believed they were chosen by their gods to rule the galaxy. Between these two groups sat the neutral species. They were scared. Some had already lost colonies to the war. Others feared they would be next. They all wanted the fighting to stop, but nobody knew how. "The humans will decide," announced Council Member Threxdar. He was from a race that looked like giant spiders. "They are new to our council, but they have proven to be wise. Let them choose which side is right." All eyes turned to Lee. He felt the weight of their stares but did not move. Dr. Park stopped writing and looked at him too. She knew what he was thinking. The human species had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago. They were young compared to civilizations that were millions of years old. Most aliens saw humans as children, playing with adult toys. But humans had something special. They learned fast, they adapted quickly, and they saw things differently than other species. War Chief Grixthol stood up. His heavy boots made the floor shake. "Humans!" he roared. "You know strength when you see it. The Vorthak Empire offers you honor in battle. Join us, and we will teach you how to fight like true warriors." Before Lee could answer, High Priestess Sil-Andra rose from her seat. She moved like smoke in the wind. "Do not listen to their violence," she said in her soft voice. "The Zalani Federation offers you wisdom. We will show you the true path to the stars." Other council members began to shout. Some demanded humans pick the Vorthak. Others insisted they choose the Zalani. A few threatened what would happen if humans chose wrong. Lee stood up slowly. He was not tall like Grixthol or graceful like Sil-Andra. He was just a man in a simple uniform. But something about him made the whole hall go quiet. "The council asks for peace," Lee said. His voice was calm and clear. He did not shout or whisper. He just spoke like a man telling the truth. "Humanity will give you peace, but not the way you think." The hall exploded with noise again. Aliens demanded to know what he meant. War Chief Grixthol pounded his fists and yelled about picking sides. High Priestess Sil-Andra's skin turned angry red colors. Dr. Park stood up next to Lee. She pressed a button on her tablet. A hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed detailed information about every species present. Their fears, their hopes, their secret weaknesses. You want us to choose a side? Lee continued. But choosing sides is what started this war. Instead, we will answer with quiet. Council member Threxdar clicked his mandibles in confusion. What does that mean, human? Lee looked around the hall at all the different aliens, warriors and priests, traders and scholars, predators and prey, all of them afraid, all of them angry, all of them lost. It means we will not fight your war, Lee said. We will not pick your sides. We will not play your games. We will do something else, something that will end this war forever. High Priestess Silandra floated forward. Her voice became sharp like a knife. You speak in riddles, human. The Council demands a real answer. We have given you our answer, Dr. Park said. She had studied these aliens for years. She knew what scared them most. Humanity chooses peace, through quiet. You will understand soon enough. War Chief Grixthol roared with anger. If you will not fight with us, then you are against us. Choose now, or face the consequences. Lee smiled. It was not a happy smile, or a mean smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. We have chosen, he said, and our choice will end your war. The captain turned and walked toward the exit. Dr. Park followed, carrying her tablet full of alien secrets. Their footsteps echoed in the huge hall. Where are you going? Kethvar called after them. The council is not finished. Lee stopped at the door and looked back. The hall was full of beings who could destroy planets with their thoughts. Some could live for thousands of years. Others could travel between stars without ships. But they could not stop a simple war. We are going to bring peace, Lee said. Real peace, the kind that lasts. You asked humanity to choose a side. We choose the side of quiet. The door closed behind them with a soft sound. The Galactic Council was left in confused silence. Nobody understood what the humans meant, but they would learn soon enough. War Chief Grixthol and High Priestess Silandra looked at each other across the hall. For a moment, they forgot they were enemies. They were both confused by the strange humans who spoke in puzzles. What do they mean by quiet? Silandra asked. Grixthol shook his massive head. I do not know, but I do not trust it. Outside the council hall, Lee and Dr. Park walked to their ship. The Silent Thunder was not impressive to look at. It was smaller than most warships and had no visible weapons. But it had something more powerful than guns or bombs. It had a crew that understood the power of watching and waiting. Send the message to Earth, Lee told his communications officer as they boarded the ship. Tell Admiral Cho that the Council has made its request. Now we begin our answer. Dr. Park sat down at her station and opened her files on alien psychology. She had work to do. The war would not end with battles or treaties. It would end when the fighters themselves decided to stop, and humanity would help them make that choice. The Silent Thunder left the Council station quietly, just as its name suggested. Behind them, the Great Hall continued to buzz with confused voices. Nobody knew what the humans planned to do. But they would find out soon enough. Humanity had chosen quiet as their weapon, and quiet, as they would learn, could be the loudest sound in the galaxy. 3 weeks passed after the meeting at the Galactic Council. The war between the Vorthak Empire and the Zalani Federation grew worse. More ships exploded in space, more planets burned, more children cried for parents who would never come home. But something strange started to happen. Commander Kim Tae-ho sat on the bridge of his ship, the quiet observer. Around him, 5 other human vessels floated in empty space between 2 enemy fleets. They had no shields up, no weapons ready. They just watched. Sir, said Lieutenant Han Mireille from her communications station. The Vorthak fleet is moving toward the Zalani colony on Kepler 7. They'll be in weapons range in 2 hours. Kim nodded, but did not look worried. Are we recording everything? Yes, sir. Every ship movement, every communication, every weapon. Charge. All of it. The human ships had appeared 3 weeks ago in both Vorthak and Zalani space at the same time. This should have been impossible. How could the same ships be in 2 places at once? The answer was simple. There were many human ships, and they all looked exactly the same. When the aliens asked what the humans wanted, they got no answer. When enemy fleets shot at the human ships, the humans simply moved away and kept watching. They never shot back. They never threatened anyone. They just watched and recorded. "The Zilani are sending fighters to meet them," reported Ensign Park Woo-bin from the sensor station. "Looks like 30 attack craft." Kim stood up and walked to the front window. In the distance, he could see the lights of both fleets preparing for battle. Soon people would die, and the humans would watch it all happen. "Mirai," Kim said quietly, "begin the broadcast." Lieutenant Han Mirai pressed several buttons on her panel. Across the galaxy, on every communication channel used by both sides, a simple message began to play. "This is Dr. Yoon Jae-min of the Human Observation Fleet," said a calm voice. "Today is the 74th day of fighting in the Kepler system. We are here to record what happens. We will not take sides. We will not interfere. We will only watch and remember." The message was followed by something that made both fleets pause. It was a list of names, thousands of names. All the soldiers and civilians who had died in this system during the past weeks. Vorthak Warrior, Grex Thol, age 42, died when his fighter was shot down over Kepler 3. He left behind 3 children. Zilani Healer, Silneth, age 97, died when her hospital was bombed. She had saved over 1,000 lives during her career. Human trader Bill Chen, age 35, died when his supply ship was caught between the fleets. He was delivering medical supplies to refugees. The list went on and on. Name after name, life after life. Each one read clearly in both Vorthak and Zilani languages. The human translator had spent weeks learning how to pronounce each name correctly. On the Vorthak command ship, War Chief Grixthol listened to the broadcast with growing anger. "Turn it off," he roared. "I do not want to hear this." But his communications officer shook his head. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. We can't block it without shutting down our own systems." Meanwhile, on the Zilani flagship, High Priestess Silandra felt something she had not felt in years. Shame. The humans were not accusing anyone. They were not taking sides. They were just telling the truth about what had happened. "Why are they doing this?" asked her aide, a young Zilani named Veltar. Silandra watched the human ships floating peacefully in the distance. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I wish they would stop." Dr. Yoon Jae-min continued his broadcast from the human ship Silent Truth. He was not a soldier. He was a teacher who studied history. But Admiral Cho had asked him to join this mission because he understood something important. He knew that the truth was the most powerful weapon humans had. "The battle for Kepler 7 is about to begin," Dr. Yoon said in his gentle voice. "Both fleets believe they are fighting for good reasons. The Vorthak say they fight for honor and strength. The Zilani say they fight for faith and justice, but the dead do not care about reasons." As he spoke, his words were accompanied by images from the human sensors. Pictures of destroyed cities, refugee ships packed with frightened families, medical stations overwhelmed with wounded soldiers. The images were not fake or changed in any way. They were just the truth of what war looked like, when no one was trying to make it seem heroic or noble. On both fleets, soldiers began to feel uncomfortable. They had been told this war was glorious. They had been told their enemies were evil monsters who deserved to die. But the human broadcasts showed something different. The broadcasts showed that their enemies were people too. People with families, and dreams and fears just like their own. Commander Kim received a message from another human ship. "Sir, this is Captain Oh Min-seok on the Silent Witness. The Zilani fighters are changing course. They're not moving to attack position." Kim was not surprised. "And the Vorthak fleet?" "They're slowing down too. Both sides seem hesitant." This was what the humans had hoped for. Not to stop the war with force, but to make the fighters think about what they were doing. Lieutenant Han Mi-rae looked up from her station. "Sir, I'm getting communications from both fleets. They want to know why we're here." What should I tell them? Kim thought for a moment. Tell them the truth. We are here because the Galactic Council asked for peace. This is how humans make peace. The message was sent to both fleets. The response was immediate and angry. "This is not peace," came a roar from the Vorthak commander. This is interference. Leave our battle space immediately or we will fire on you!" From the Zalani side came a different but equally angry message. "Your presence here is unwelcome. We do not need witnesses to our righteous cause." But the human ships did not leave. They simply moved to a safer distance and continued their broadcast. Dr. Yoon had finished reading the list of the dead. Now he began to share other information. Economic reports about the cost of the war, environmental data about the damage to planets, medical statistics about injuries and disease in refugee camps. The total cost of this war so far is estimated at 47 trillion galactic credits, he said. This is enough money to build hospitals on every inhabited world in both empires. It is enough to end hunger for a generation. He paused to let that sink in, then continued. The environmental damage to 17 planets will take centuries to repair. 3 worlds that once supported billions of people are now uninhabitable. The refugee crisis has displaced over 200 million beings. As the broadcast continued, something unexpected happened on both fleets. Soldiers began to listen. At first, they tried to ignore the human voices, but the broadcasts never stopped. Hour after hour, day after day, the humans kept talking. They did not preach or lecture. They did not say the war was wrong. They just presented facts, numbers, statistics, truth. And slowly the truth began to change things. On the Vorthak command ship, a young officer named Kex Vol asked his commander a question that had never been asked before. "Sir, why are we really fighting?" The commander looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean? I mean, what will happen if we win? Will the dead come back to life? Will the destroyed planets be fixed? Will the refugees go home?" The commander had no good answer. On the Zalani flagship, a similar conversation was happening. A weapons officer named Tilminos watched the human ships and wondered aloud. Why don't they fight back when we threaten them? High Priestess Silandra had been wondering the same thing. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "they understand something we do not." The battle that was supposed to happen that day never came. Both fleets stayed in position, but neither one attacked. The human ships continued to float between them, watching, and recording and broadcasting the truth. As night fell in space, Commander Kim stood on his bridge and looked out at the enemy fleets. They were still there, still armed, still angry, but something had changed. "Sir," said Lieutenant Han Mireille, "I'm picking up communications between the fleets. They're talking to each other." This was new. For 3 years, the only communications between Vorthak and Zalani had been threats and demands for surrender. "What are they saying?" Mireille listened carefully to her equipment. "They're arguing about the human broadcasts. Some of them are angry that we're here, but others are asking questions about the things we've shared." Kim smiled. It was beginning to work. The humans were not trying to stop the war with weapons. They were trying to stop it with something much more powerful. They were stopping it with truth. And truth, as the galaxy was about to learn, was the strongest force in the universe. 2 months had passed since the human ships first appeared in the war zones. The fighting had not stopped, but it had changed in ways that confused everyone. Admiral Cho Sun-hee sat in her office on Earth, reading reports from her fleet commanders. The news was strange and encouraging at the same time. "Admiral," said her aide, Captain Nam Hyun-jin, as he entered her office. "The latest reports from the observation fleets." Cho took the datapad and read the first report. It was from Commander Kim Tae-ho in the Kepler system. "The Vorthak fleet attacked the Zalani colony on Kepler 7 as planned," the report said. "But before bombing the civilian areas, they broadcasted evacuation warnings. They gave the civilians 6 hours to escape. This has never happened before in this war." Cho raised an eyebrow and continued reading. "When questioned by our observation team, Vorthak Commander Grexnul said, 'We are not monsters. We fight with honor.' He seemed upset that humans were watching and recording the attack." The next report was even more interesting. It came from Captain Lee Sang-woo, observing a battle in the Zalani home system. "Zalani forces were preparing to use poison gas on a Vorthak base," Lee's report stated. "The attack would have killed everyone on the base, including prisoners of war. But when they noticed our observation ship was recording, they changed their plan. Instead, they used conventional weapons that allowed the Vorthak to surrender." Admiral Cho set down the pad and looked at Captain Nam. "They're becoming self-conscious." "Yes, ma'am. Both sides are starting to care about how they look to us. They're avoiding the worst tactics when they know we're watching. This was exactly what the human planners had hoped for. Professor Lim, Kyung-soo and his team of alien psychology experts had predicted this might happen. The professor's theory was simple. Most intelligent species had something like a conscience. They could do terrible things in the heat of battle or when they thought no one was watching. But when they knew their actions were being recorded and judged, they became more careful. The humans were not threatening anyone. They were not demanding changes. They were just watching. But that watching was like a mirror, forcing both sides to see themselves clearly. On the Vorthak homeworld, War Chief Grixthol was having problems he had never faced before. His own commanders were questioning orders. "Why do the humans watch us?" asked Sub-Commander Vexthor during a strategy meeting. "What do they want?" Grixthol slammed his fist on the table. "It does not matter what they want. We fight for Vorthak honor." But even as he said it, Grixthol felt doubt creeping into his mind. The human broadcasts had been listing Vorthak casualties alongside Zalani ones. They read the names with the same respect, the same sadness. As if Vorthak and Zalani lives were equally valuable. This idea should have made Grixthol angry. The Vorthak believed in strength above all else. The weak deserved to die. But listening to those human voices reading the names of his fallen warriors made him feel something he had never felt before. Shame. Meanwhile, on the Zalani sacred world of Silthis, High Priestess Silandra was facing similar doubts. Her people believed they were chosen by the gods to rule the galaxy. The war against the Vorthak was supposed to be holy and righteous, but the human broadcasts made it seem like just another war. They showed Zalani soldiers doing the same terrible things as their enemies. They counted Zalani crimes alongside Vorthak ones. "Perhaps," suggested one of her advisors, "we should ask the humans to leave." Silandra had thought of this many times, but every attempt to make the humans go away had failed. The human ships were too fast to catch and too small to worry about. And they never fought back, which made attacking them feel wrong. "The humans claim they want peace," Silandra said. "But their methods are strange. They do not negotiate or threaten. They just watch." Back on Earth, Professor Lim Kyung-soo was studying the psychological data collected by the observation fleets. His team had been analyzing how both alien species reacted to being watched. "The Vorthak are warrior-based," he explained to Admiral Cho during a video call. "Their entire culture is built on the idea of honorable combat. When they do something dishonorable and know someone is recording it, they feel shame." "And the Zalani?" Cho asked. "They believe they are morally superior to other species. When they act in ways that contradict this belief and know others are watching, they become defensive and self-conscious." Lim pulled up a chart showing battle patterns over the past 2 months. "Look at these numbers. Civilian casualties are down 60% in areas where our ships are observing. Use of banned weapons has dropped to almost zero. Both sides are fighting more carefully, more humanely." This was working better than anyone had hoped. But Lim had a warning. The effect might not last forever, he said. Eventually, they might get used to being watched. Or they might become angry enough to attack our ships directly. Admiral Cho nodded. "Then we need to adjust our approach. What do you recommend?" "We start focusing on specific psychological pressure points. Show them data that will force them to question the war itself, not just how they fight it." The next phase of the human plan began a week later. Dr. Yoon Jae-min, still broadcasting from his ship in the war zone, started sharing new kinds of information. "Today marks the 1,000th day of the Vorthak-Zalani War," he said in his calm voice. "In that time, neither side has gained any significant advantage. The front lines are almost exactly where they were when the fighting began." He paused to let that sink in. "The Vorthak Empire has spent 37% of its total resources on this war. The Zalani Federation has spent 41%. Both civilizations are now poorer and weaker than when the war started. These numbers hit both sides like physical blows. Military leaders had been telling their people that victory was just around the corner. The humans were proving that was a lie." Dr. Yoon continued with more devastating facts. Pre-war, the average Vorthak citizen lived to be 97 years old. Now, due to resource shortages and war stress, life expectancy has dropped to 81 years. Before the conflict, Zilani colonies were expanding to new worlds every year. Now, they have lost 12 colonies and gained none. The broadcasts were accompanied by video messages from refugees, scientists, and ordinary citizens on both sides. These were not actors or propaganda. They were real people talking about how the war had affected their lives. A Vorthak mother spoke about sending her son to fight and never seeing him again. A Zilani farmer talked about losing his crops when battles destroyed his world's atmosphere. An elderly Vorthak scientist explained how war funding had ended his research into curing a common disease. These personal stories were more powerful than any weapon. They showed that the war was not just about armies and territory, it was about real people suffering for no good reason. Captain Oh Min Seok, commanding the observation ship Silent Witness, watched the enemy fleets carefully. He could see changes in their behavior that went beyond just avoiding civilian casualties. "They're hesitating," he reported to Admiral Cho. "Both sides are taking longer to make decisions. They're second-guessing themselves." This was exactly what the humans wanted. Not to stop the war by force, but to make the fighters stop and think. The psychological pressure was building on both sides. Vorthak commanders started asking their leaders harder questions about war goals. Zilani priests began to wonder if their gods really wanted this much death and destruction. More importantly, soldiers on both sides started to see their enemies differently. The human broadcasts treated all casualties equally. They read Vorthak and Zilani names with the same respect. They showed families on both sides crying for their lost loved ones. It became harder to think of the enemy as monsters when the humans kept showing that they were people just like themselves. War Chief Grixthol tried to ignore the growing doubts in his own mind. But late at night, alone in his command quarters, he found himself listening to the human broadcasts. The calm voices reading casualty reports, the personal stories of loss and pain. He had started this war to bring glory to the Vorthak Empire. But what glory was there in orphaning children and destroying worlds? High Priestess Silandra struggled with similar thoughts. She had believed the war was a holy mission to spread Zilani enlightenment across the galaxy. But the humans were showing her something different. They were showing her that war was just war. Not holy, not glorious, not necessary. Just a terrible waste of life and resources that helped no one. The weight of human witness was becoming too heavy for both sides to bear, and the war was beginning to crack under that weight. 6 months after the humans began their quiet observation, the war reached a terrible moment. Both the Vorthak Empire and the Zilani Federation had discovered ways to end the conflict quickly and completely. On the Vorthak Military Research Station, Chief Scientist Krexmol stood before a massive holographic display. The image showed the Zilani home system with all its defenses marked in red. "We have found their weakness," he told War Chief Grixthol through a secure communication link. "The Zilani have focused all their shield generators on protecting their main worlds, but there is a gap in their network. One coordinated strike could destroy their entire defensive grid." Grixthol studied the display with hungry eyes. "How many ships would we need?" 200 battle cruisers. We attack from 17 different directions at exactly the same time. Their shields will fail, and we can destroy their capital world before they can react." This was what Grixthol had been waiting for. One final battle that would end the war and prove Vorthak's superiority forever. But on the other side of the galaxy, the Zilani had made their own terrible discovery. Dr. Silvex, the Federation's top biological researcher, stood in her secret laboratory. Around her were samples of a new creation. It looked like simple blue dust, but it was the most dangerous weapon ever made. "The biological agent is ready, High Priestess," she reported to Silandra. "When released in a Vorthak atmosphere, it will attack their specific brain chemistry. Death will be swift, but certain." Silandra looked at the innocent-looking containers. How many worlds could this substance affect? All of them, if we spread it correctly. The Vorthak reproduction centers, their military academies, their government buildings. Within 1 month, their entire leadership would be gone. The war would end. Both sides prepared for their final attacks in secret. Neither knew about the other's plan. Each believed they would strike first and win the war before their enemies could react. Captain Omin Seok was commanding the human observation post in the neutral zone when his sensors detected the unusual activity. The Vorthak were gathering, their largest fleet ever assembled. The Zalani were moving ships with strange cargo toward Vorthak space. "Something big is happening," he reported to Admiral Cho. "Both sides are preparing for major operations." Dr. Seo Ji-won, the human team's expert on alien military communications, had been monitoring encrypted channels. "I've picked up fragments of their planning," she said. "It sounds like both sides are preparing final attacks." The humans realized they were witnessing the end of their observation mission. Soon, one side or the other would launch a devastating strike. The war would be over, but the cost would be beyond imagination. Fleet Admiral Baek In-ho, the overall commander of human forces, made a decision that would change everything. "All observation ships," he broadcast on the human command frequency. "This is Admiral Baek. Implement Operation Silent Stand. Move to positions between the enemy fleets. Prepare for final observation protocol." Captain O received his specific orders minutes later. His ship, along with 15 other human vessels, was to position itself directly between the Vorthak attack fleet and its target. "Sir," said his navigation officer, Ensign Ko Yoon-ji, "if we move to those coordinates, we'll be directly in the path of both attacks." O nodded calmly. "That's the idea. Both sides are about to destroy each other completely. We're going to give them one last chance to think about what they're doing." The human ships moved slowly into position. They were not trying to hide or avoid detection. They wanted both sides to see them clearly. War Chief Grixthol was on the bridge of his flagship when the sensor officer made his report. "Sir, human vessels are moving into our attack corridor. 16 ships arranged in a defensive screen between us and the target." Grixthol felt a moment of confusion. "Are they trying to protect the Zalani?" "No, sir. Their weapons are not active. They're just sitting there." At the same time, High Priestess Sil-Andra received a similar report from her fleet. The human observation ships have positioned themselves between our release points and the Vorthak worlds, her tactical officer reported. "They're directly in the path of our biological weapons." Sil-Andra's skin shifted to a worried blue color. "Do they know what we're planning?" "Unknown, High Priestess, but they would be killed if we proceed with the attack." For the first time in months, both War Chief Grixthol and High Priestess Sil-Andra tried to contact the human ships directly. "Human vessels," Grixthol broadcast on an open channel. "You are in our battle zone. Move away immediately or you will be destroyed." The response came from Admiral Baek himself, broadcasting from the human command ship. "This is Fleet Admiral Baek In-ho of the Human Observation Fleet. We have moved to these positions deliberately. We will not move. We will not fight back. We will simply watch and remember what you choose to do." Sil-Andra tried a different approach. "Human ships, you do not understand the situation. Our attack cannot be delayed. You must leave this area, for your own safety." Admiral Beck's response was the same. "We understand the situation perfectly. You are both preparing to commit genocide. We are here to witness what you choose to do next." The word genocide hit both leaders like a physical blow. It was not a word that had been used in their war planning. They had talked about final victory and decisive action and ending the threat forever. But the humans called it what it really was: mass murder. Admiral Baek continued his broadcast. "For 6 months, humanity has observed your war. We have recorded every battle, documented every casualty, preserved every moment of unnecessary cruelty. We came because the Galactic Council asked for peace." His voice remained calm and steady. "Now you both prepare to end this war through the complete destruction of your enemies. You plan to kill billions of innocent people to achieve victory." The Admiral paused, letting his words sink in. "If this is what you choose, you will have to go through us first. We will not stop you. We cannot stop you. But we will watch. We will record. And we will remember." War Chief Grixthol stood on his command bridge, staring at the small human ships floating in space ahead of his massive fleet. Those ships contained no weapons that could threaten him, no shields that could stop his attack, no armies that could fight his warriors. But somehow, they were the most formidable opponents he had ever faced. "Sir," asked his tactical officer, "shall we destroy the human ships and proceed with the attack?" Grixthol opened his mouth to give the order, then stopped. How could he explain to his people that he had murdered peaceful observers to win a HFY war? How could he face other species in the Galactic Council after killing humans who had never threatened anyone? On the Zalani command ship, Silandra faced the same terrible choice. Her biological weapons would kill the human observers along with every Vorthak in the target systems. The humans knew this would happen, she realized aloud. They knew we would both prepare final attacks. They positioned themselves to force us to choose. Her aide, Veltar, looked confused. Choose what, High Priestess? Choose whether our victory is worth becoming the kind of monsters who murder innocent witnesses. The standoff continued for hours. Both fleets remained in position, their weapons ready, their targets chosen, but neither side could bring themselves to fire through the line of peaceful human ships. Strategic analyst Shin Do-yoon, working from his station on Admiral Bayek's flagship, calculated the psychological impact on both enemy commanders. They're trapped, he reported. If they attack through us, they become the obvious villains in galactic history. If they don't attack, they lose their chance to end the war. Translator Ko Yun-ji had been monitoring communications from both fleets. Sir, both sides are demanding that we move. But there's something else. Their own officers are starting to question the attacks. This was what the humans had hoped for. By positioning themselves as innocent witnesses, they had forced both sides to see their planned attacks. Clearly for the first time, it was not victory or glory or justice. It was simply mass murder with military excuses. Admiral Bayek made one final broadcast to both fleets. The choice is yours, he said simply. We are here because the Galactic Council asked humanity to bring peace. This is our answer. We choose to stand between you and genocide. We choose to witness whatever you decide to do. We choose to remember. The human ships waited in silent formation between the two greatest fleets in galactic history, unarmed observers facing weapons that could crack planets. But in that moment, the observers were stronger than all the weapons pointed at them, because sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is simply someone who refuses to look away. The galaxy held its breath. Two massive fleets faced each other across the void, ready to end their war with complete destruction. Between them floated 16 small human ships, unarmed and defenseless. Commander An Jun-ho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Silent Guardian. Through the forward window, he could see the massive Vorthak battle fleet. Their weapons were charged and ready. Any one of those ships could destroy his vessel with a single shot. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Engineer Kwon Hye-jin monitored the ship's systems. Navigator Park Woo-jin kept them positioned exactly where they needed to be. None of them spoke about the danger they faced. They all knew they might die in the next few minutes, but they also knew why they were there. Sir, said Communications Officer Yoon Min-jung, both fleets are demanding that we move. The Vorthak commander says they will fire in 1 hour if we don't leave. An nodded but did not change course. And the Zalani? Similar. Message. They say their attack cannot wait much longer. On the Vorthak flagship, War Chief Grixthol paced back and forth on his command bridge. His officers watched him nervously. They had never seen their leader look so uncertain. Sir, said his weapons officer, the human ships are not moving. Do we proceed with the attack? Grixthol stopped pacing and stared at the human vessels on his main screen. They looked so small and fragile compared to his mighty fleet. But somehow, they had become the biggest obstacle he had ever faced. If we fire through them, he said slowly, we will be known forever as the ones who murdered peaceful observers. But, sir, another officer protested, if we don't attack now, we may never have another chance to end this war. Meanwhile, on the Zalani command ship, High Priestess Silandra faced the same terrible choice. Her skin had turned a deep purple color, showing her inner conflict. The biological weapons are ready for release, reported Dr. Silvex. But the human ships are directly in our path. Silandra closed her eyes and tried to pray for guidance. But for the first time in her life, her gods seemed silent. Hours passed. The standoff continued. Neither fleet moved. Neither fleet fired. But something was happening inside both fleets that their commanders could not see. Ordinary soldiers and officers were starting to ask questions they had never asked before. On a Vorthak destroyer, a young officer named Thex Null spoke to his captain. Sir, Why are the humans willing to die to stop this attack? The captain had no good answer. They are weak, he said finally. They do not understand strength. But Thexnol was not satisfied. If they are weak, why does their presence make us hesitate? Why don't we just push through them? Similar conversations were happening throughout the Vorthak fleet. Soldiers who had never questioned orders were suddenly wondering what they were really fighting for. On the Zalani ships, the questions were different but just as troubling. Why do the humans care so much about Vorthak lives? Asked a weapons operator named Kyle Resch. The Vorthak are our enemies. Her commander struggled to answer. The humans do not understand our holy mission. But what if they do understand? Kyle Resch continued. What if they see something we cannot see? As the hours passed, more and more personnel on both sides began to doubt. The human presence had done something unexpected. It had forced everyone to see their actions from the outside. Dr. Ryu Sang-wook, humanity's chief negotiator, watched the standoff from his ship at the edge of the battle zone. He had spent years studying alien psychology, preparing for this moment. They're breaking, he reported to Admiral Cho on Earth. The psychological pressure is too much. Both sides are starting to question not just this attack, but the entire war. 17 hours after the standoff began, something unexpected happened. On the Vorthak flagship, a group of senior officers approached War Chief Grixthol. Sir, said Commander Vexthor, speaking for the group, we request permission to speak freely. Grixthol looked at his officers. These were warriors he had fought, beside for years. He trusted them with his life. Speak. We have been discussing the human actions, Vexthor said carefully. We do not understand why they are willing to die for our enemies. But their courage makes us ask questions about our own courage. Grixthol's eyes narrowed. What questions? Is it brave to win through the complete destruction of our enemies? Or is it more brave to find another way? This was not the kind of question Vorthak warriors were supposed to ask. But somehow, the sight of the small human ships refusing to move had changed everything. At almost the same time, High Priestess Silandra was facing a similar challenge from her own people. High Priestess, said her aide Veltar, many of the crew are asking why the humans would sacrifice themselves for strangers. Silandra had been wondering the same thing. Perhaps they see something we do not, she admitted. What could they see that we cannot? Silandra looked out at the human ships floating peacefully in space. Perhaps they see that there is no victory in genocide, no honor in mass murder, no glory in ending a war by destroying everything our enemies love. The breakthrough came in the 18th hour. War Chief Grixthol made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. Power down all weapons, he ordered. His bridge crew stared at him in shock. Sir, you heard me. Power down all weapons. Send a message to the Zalani fleet. Tell them the Vorthak Empire requests a discussion. The word felt strange in his mouth. Vorthak warriors did not discuss things with enemies. They conquered them or died trying. But the sight of the human ships had changed something fundamental in his thinking. Minutes later, a similar order went out on the Zalani command frequency. All ships, stand down from attack positions, High Priestess Silandra commanded. Send a message to the Vorthak fleet. Tell them the Zalani Federation is willing to talk. Admiral Bayek received both messages on his flagship. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to smile. All human ships, he broadcast. Maintain positions but stand down from observation protocol. Begin preparation for Operation Silent Mediation. The war did not end with a peace treaty. It did not end with a great battle or a negotiated settlement. It ended because both sides could no longer bear the weight of human eyes upon them. Dr. Ryu Sang-wook became the mediator for the talks that followed. But his job was easy. By the time the representatives met, both sides were ready to stop fighting. The humans did not dictate terms. They did not demand concessions. They simply provided a neutral place to meet and gentle guidance when the talks became difficult. War Chief Grixthol and High Priestess Silandra met face-to-face for the first time in years. They looked at each other across a simple table while Dr. Ryu sat quietly to one side. Why did your people do this? Grixthol asked the human negotiator. Why did you risk everything for strangers? Dr. Ryu thought carefully before answering. Because the Galactic Council asked us to bring peace. This is how humans understand peace. Not as the absence of war, but as the presence of understanding. Silandra's skin shifted to a thoughtful green color. Your people are strange. You have great ships and powerful weapons, but you chose to use silence instead. Sometimes, Doctor, Rue said gently, the strongest action is choosing not to act. Sometimes the loudest statement is made in perfect silence. The peace talks took 3 months. There were arguments and walkouts and moments when everything seemed to fall apart. But the human observers were always there, watching quietly, reminding both sides of what they had almost done. In the end, the agreement was simple. Both empires would withdraw to their original borders. Trade would resume gradually. Prisoner exchanges would begin immediately. And most importantly, both sides would work together to rebuild the worlds damaged by their war. 6 months later, Admiral Lee Dong-woo stood on the observation deck of the new human diplomatic station. The facility orbited a neutral world where former enemies were learning to work together. Chief of Staff Hong Min-jung approached with reports from across the galaxy. Sir, we're receiving requests for mediation from 3 new conflicts. The Spiral Arm Trade War, the conflict in the Magellanic Clouds, and the territorial dispute in the Orion sector. Lee nodded thoughtfully. Prepare the observation fleets. Ready the Silent Thunder and her sister ships. Hong looked puzzled. All of them, sir? For 3 separate conflicts? Lee smiled. The galaxy is learning something new. They're learning that being watched changes how you behave. They're learning that it's harder to do terrible things when you know someone is recording everything. He gestured toward the planet below, where Vorthak engineers and Zelani scientists worked side by side to repair war damage. Our method is spreading. Other species are starting to use quiet observation instead of force. They're learning that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is simply to watch it carefully until the solution becomes obvious. As they watched, a transport ship arrived, carrying refugees returning to their rebuilt homes. The ship's crew included both Vorthak and Zelani personnel working together. The Galactic Council asked humanity to choose a side, Lee said quietly. We chose the side of peace. Not the peace that comes from victory or defeat, but the peace that comes from understanding. Hong pulled up a star chart showing the locations of human diplomatic stations throughout the galaxy. There were dozens of them now, each one a quiet reminder that someone was always watching.